Welcome to Talking Kootenay Books. My name is Keith Powell, and our guest today is West Kootenay author Sean Arthur Joyce. Nice to have you here as our guest today, Sean.
Thank you.
You know, you're quite a prolific writer. You've got a new novel out. You've written a book about history. You've also written a number of poems and poetry books, so congratulations. Before we get into your new novel, I just wanted to ask you a little bit about your previous book. Can you just tell me a little bit of it? It was more historical, right?
Absolutely. It was a little-known Canadian story of the British home children. Mm-hmm. These were the 100,000 boys and girls who were shipped from Britain to Canada in the years 1869 to roughly 1948 to work as indentured servants on Canadian farms. Mm-hmm. The title of the book is Laying the Children's Ghost to Rest. The reason I chose that title is because for a lot of Canadian families, an estimated 4 million Canadians who are the descendants of these children, there was a lot of unanswered questions about this aspect of their personal past, as well as, of course, the larger picture of Canadian history, which many people really didn't know about this particular story.
Did you have a personal connection to the story? What prompted you to write the book?
I discovered in doing genealogical research that my grandfather had been one.
Oh, okay.
So Cyril William Joyce, my grandfather, had been sent over as a young lad of 16 to work in northern Alberta as one of these indentured servants.
I haven't read it personally, but I have had friends that have read it and found it very fascinating, the whole story and the sort of the legacy that's been left there. So thanks for sharing that. Let's go on to your new book. So what's your new novel that's out?
It's called Mountain Blues.
Okay.
It's the story of a small West Kootenay town, a small village called El Dorado, loosely based on where I live in New Denver, but it's really kind of a combination of all of these small West Kootenay towns. And what happens is they get an announcement that the Provincial Health Authority is planning on cutting back their emergency ward services to banker's hours, and is going to remove their diagnostic lab as well. So for a small remote community in the Kootenays, where it could be an hour or more to the nearest hospital, and in severe cases of stroke or heart attack, that could be, you know, as they say, the golden hour. That's very critical to a small community's survival.
So this is a novel, but it sounds like the whole theme and discussion is ripped out of the headlines. Were you motivated by local events?
Absolutely. I wrote this 3 years ago, and at the time things were status quo with our emergency ward in New Denver. But I had, as a reporter working for small community newspapers in the West Kootenay and in Victoria, I had seen these kinds of stories come and go over the years. Caslow, for example, had this happen a few years earlier. Nelson, when Interior Health came in, had something like this happen, and so on. So it's really a story that is relevant to all of these small mountain communities.
Let's just talk for a moment about your main character. I see some parallels between yourself and the main character.
Yes. Yeah, there is a definite autobiographical element to it. I will confess to that.
Yeah.
They say in creative writing classes, write what you know.
Right.
So I took that quite literally in that sense. And of course, as a fiction writer, you're free to mix and match. So you get to play around with that and perhaps make yourself a little more ideal or even a little rougher than you might be in real life.
Lots of colorful characters in the book. Does that reflect the nature of the folks that you meet on a day-to-day basis?
Absolutely. Having grown up in the Kootenays, I was born in Kimberley. My parents lived for a time in Nelson. My grandparents have lived there for decades. And you really get to see and to know a lot of, what we would call eccentric individuals. I think because the Kootenays are a place that people feel drawn to as a place of personal healing or development or spiritual growth. These are people who are not your run-of-the-mill sort of career climbers. They're people who are prepared to sacrifice a little bit in terms of their career prospects in exchange for a lifestyle that's perhaps a little bit more personally satisfying and nourishing. But that also allows for, you know, people who perhaps strike out in some rather unexpected directions, whether they're talking spirituality or otherwise.
Okay. So your book is obviously a novel.
Yes.
Why did you choose that format?
Well, as a journalist, having done this for so long, you often wonder, you know, is what I'm doing really making a difference?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you look at the world and you see the crises that we're facing, whether it's environmental or social, and, you know, writing these stories, as a journalist, you have to be dispassionate. You have to give both sides of the story, no matter what your personal feelings are or your opinions are. So sometimes you get feeling like, you know, am I really making any difference at all? Is this just kind of going by the board? And you hate to think that you come to the end of your life and all your work has come to naught and perhaps not really touched people in a deep way. Mm-hmm. Whereas stories have another dimension to them. When people hear stories, we know that from MRI scans of people when they're listening to stories that they actually go into a more retentive state. And you can tell a story and communicate a message in a way that perhaps work of nonfiction or a report in a newspaper just can't quite reach.
How about mentors? I know there's a lot of writers in the West Kootenays. Maybe some of your training, some of your background as far as writing. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I'm good friends with Tom Wayman, the poet and author, and I think probably what I share with him is he has a long history of kind of social justice type writing. He came from a family that was very influenced by, you know, the wobbly movement, the union movement and so on, and the work writing, you know, genre that he helped to found. He always maintained that sensibility of, in a sense, reflecting society back to itself with the goal of you know, aiming us towards social justice. So Tom's been a big influence on me, I think, in that way. Mm-hmm. And also Gary Geddes, the poet and also a journalist. He's written, in fact, he just wrote an excellent book called Medicine Unbundled, which is all about what happened in the hospital system with the First Nations peoples in British Columbia. So I'm very influenced by these writers that really take social issues seriously.
Interesting. We had Tom as a guest on Talking Kootenay Books, and
great.
It was great to interview him. I just want to talk about your writing style, your sort of procedure when it comes to writing. What's your methodology? How do you go about sitting down and writing?
Well, that is really determined largely by the kind of writing that I'm doing. With poetry, it tends to be very much more, you know, inspirational. You literally could be just in the middle of the night and you wake up and something is just forming itself in your mind and you have to get it down on the page. And then you obviously edit from there. With journalism, it's much more nuts and bolts. You've got a deadline, you've got a subject, you've got people you've got to interview. It's bing, bang, boom, you're done. With history, it's a bit more of a longer process, although very similar to journalism because you're also doing you're doing interviews, you're doing research. For example, laying the children's ghost to rest, I spent 7 years researching that book.
Right. So how does that differ from the novel then?
Well, with the novel, it's kind of between journalism and poetry in a way as a process for me. There is much more of an inspirational element to it where, you know, you're allowing your imagination to sort of freewheel onto the page a lot more. And the research tends to be perhaps a bit more incidental. So, for example, one of my characters in the novel, Moss the Crawler, I call him, he is a Jamaican man who's been in Canada for 30 years. And he still has this element of Rastafarianism to him, which makes him very colorful and interesting. But I had to spend some time researching Rastafari culture and also the dialect. For example, the dialect, if you go to YouTube and punch in Jamaican patois, it's literally another language.
So really what you're looking for is something that's authentic, is that?
Exactly, yeah. So what I had to do with his character in the dialogue was kind of a compromise, because if I had transcribed Jamaican patois word for word on the page, you wouldn't understand a word, trust me.
Right.
So, so that's where the research kind of came into the writing the novel. And then the rest of that was just, as I said, much more kind of like almost a poetic process of freewheeling onto the page.
So do you try and write every day?
I do, not necessarily religiously, but I'm always writing, and it could be essays, it could be poems, it could be journal, it could be just anything.
Right. Can you talk about any future projects?
Well, I actually pitched this story as the book one of a series. So I'm hopeful that if the response to this book is strong enough, and people like the characters enough, they're just going to keep appearing in subsequent novels in the same theme.
See, so yeah, I know that you're working with a publisher out of Edmonton, is that correct?
Yes.
What's that experience been like?
New West Press has been fantastic to work with. Great young team, and they have a publicist working with them as well. They were very, very helpful. In fact, I was even asked to consult on the cover design, which I was very thankful for, because you know, you often hear the sort of horror stories of authors who get books and absolutely hate the covers. And I didn't want to have that happen, and I was grateful that they asked me, because I love the cover as it is now. And very collaborative, lots of back and forth, lots of communication. Yeah, excellent to work with.
Okay. So again, I'll ask you the question, what future projects do you have in mind?
Well, it would be a sequel to Mountain Blues. I've actually started writing it, which would be called Mountain Showdown. I'm thinking I will keep mountain in the title of the subsequent novels. I was actually very influenced, or shall we say inspired, by the All Creatures Great and Small series, the Harriet books. And also Patrick Taylor's series, An Irish Country Doctor. Because both of those series very much have that local flavor to them. You've got a central character. In Harriet's books, it's the vet. In Patrick Taylor's books, it's very much modeled on his experiences as an Irish country doctor. And you are constantly meeting these, you know, funny, kind of engaging, eccentric characters in the process of their work. So very much like a journalist, if you've got a veterinarian or a doctor, they sort of have this ticket, as it were, this access pass, where they're constantly moving in and out of people's lives, right? Or they're coming to them. And so they're always meeting this broad cross-section of the community. And
that's pretty fertile ground to develop a good story, right?
Exactly, yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you, Sean. We really appreciate you being our guest today on Talking Kootenay Books. What's the book again? Mountain Blues from New West Press. And available locally throughout the Kootenays, and it does capture the essence of the Kootenays for sure. Thanks again for being our guest.
Thank you.
My name is Keith Powell, and this has been Talking Kootenay Books. Welcome to Talking Kootenay Books. My name is Keith Powell. Our guest today is Janice Strong. Janice is well known in the area, has written a number of guidebooks, hiking books, and congratulations, Janice, 4th edition out. Just quickly go through the 4 editions that you have published.
Well, this year marks the 25th year that we've been publishing Mountain Footsteps hiking books. So the first one in 1993, the second one in 1998, and the third one in 2008, and this one in 2018.
So Mountain Footsteps edition number 4.
Number 4.
Congratulations. So Janice, what...
I'll set those behind.
Yeah, maybe just set those down for us. What makes edition number 4 special? How is it different from the other 3?
a couple dozen new hikes in it.
Okay.
And expanded and updated. So I've talked a little bit more about the geology, a little bit more about the personal stories, a little bit more about the details along the way of the hiking trails.
I can't imagine all the research that you put into this. So not only do you hike all the trails, but I notice you've talked a little bit about the history and the significance of some of these trails. How do you go about gathering all that information?
I search out people that know the history, and then I interview them and find out the details. And then some of the other history is written down in books I have in my own personal collection. Sometimes it's on the internet as far as history and access.
Well, this new book that you've put out is nothing short of spectacular. Lots of photos. Do you have any idea how many photos you have in there?
Well, there's probably a photo on every page, and it's about a 400-page book. So.
Okay. So I know you're a tremendous photographer, so a great way to showcase your photography. Was that by design, or did that just sort of happen?
There was color in the 3rd edition, and it wasn't printed that well. So the publisher said, it's being printed in Canada this time. The quality is going to be excellent. So we just were able to go and pick photos. And
let's just talk about the hikes. What about your favorite hike in there?
My favorite hike is Tanglefoot Lake.
Okay. Can you just describe that briefly?
Well, you go up a rough road behind the trailhead to Fisher Peak, and then when you get to the trailhead of Fisher Peak, you keep going another 4 or 5 kilometers. And then you climb up an old mining road to an old copper mine. The mine's long gone. And then you get to a couple little meadows, and then another steep bit, you're up to tarns, little tiny lakes in the mountains. And then up and over a pass to Tanglefoot drainage, and then down again to Tanglefoot Lake. Excellent.
So I can just feel your passion for hiking, and you often hike in a group. So I know you often take people with you. How do you draw on their experience? How do you work as a sort of maybe as a group to really enjoy a hike?
Well, I'm with a friends group that we have. We've been hiking together for 30 years now. And we started hiking with Cranbrook Parks and Recreation in the 80s.
Okay.
And I was their guide in the 1980s. And then we just all became really close friends, and now 30 years later, we're still hiking. Well, I guess it's maybe more than 30 years later.
Okay. How many hikes are in your new book?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know how many.
Okay.
Because there's sub-hikes sometimes. There's further explorations. You can do another day trip from here, and so it's hard to count them all.
Right. But a great selection all over the valley, right? Not just the Cranbrook area.
Oh, yes. We go up as far, almost to Golden, all the way up the Elk Valley, and to Creston as well.
Okay. For a moment, let's examine your relationship with your publisher and so forth. It's been the same publisher that's published all 4 editions?
That's right. We're absolutely fortunate. Rocky Mountain Books.
Okay. Where are they based out of?
They're based out of Calgary, and now they've got main offices in Vancouver and Victoria.
Okay. So what was that experience like working with Rocky Mountain Books?
Well, it was a chance meeting in 1991 that I met the publisher, Tony Daffrin, at a conference. So he said, yeah, we'll take your book. Let's meet in Calgary, and we can see if that's going to work. And I went to Calgary, met him, and he's been with me ever since. He's since sold the company, and the company's still excellent.
So this book took a little bit longer to get out than you had anticipated, but it seems to me that the results were well worth the wait.
Absolutely. I sent the first copy in last spring to get proofed and edited and whatever, and they said there's no way they can do a quality product in that time. So we had a year delay.
But you're awfully happy to see it now?
Oh, we're thrilled, yeah. And it's coincidental that it marks the 25th year of the first edition.
And congratulations, Janice. I understand you've appeared on the bestseller list in BC Books. So
4 weeks in a row now.
Yeah.
So we're absolutely thrilled.
Great. That's a testimony to the quality of the book and the popularity of hiking in the region. So my wife has always told me that she wants to hike every hike in your book. Now, I know we've done quite a few, but not every one. Do you know of anyone that has hiked every one except yourself?
No, I don't.
Okay, so we should throw that out. Maybe we should invite people to let us know if that is the case.
Sure, I'd be willing to do that. We could run a big Facebook spread and tell people I've hiked every hike in the book. Maybe Denny Kerr has.
Yeah, wouldn't be surprised. So let's just sum it up. So 4th edition and Mountain Footsteps. And again, what's the motivation? Why do you keep putting out editions?
Well, I thought at the 3rd edition that was going to be the end of that, but there's just so many changes in the roads, changes in the trails, and I'm still physically able to hike them, and I'm still mentally able to do the work, so let's do it.
Right, and reaction, what's been
People love it anyway, yeah.
People, very positive reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Well, congratulations, Janice. It's been great to have you as a guest on Talking Kootenay Books. Congratulations on
Thank you.
On such a good job, and showcase to your photos as well. It's really an outstanding example of a local book. So
well,
congratulations.
thank you very much, Keith. Yeah.
This has been Talking Kootenay Books, and my name is Keith Powell. Welcome to Talking Kootenay Books. My name is Keith Powell. I'm your host. And today I'm talking with Erin Dalton. Erin is the owner of Lotus Books in downtown Cranbrook. Erin, it's great to have you as a guest today. And thank you for being so generous and allowing us to tape our show here over the last year or so. I just wanted to talk about independent books and how important they are to the community. In your estimation, what does an independent bookstore bring to a community?
Oh, how long do we have? I think it brings a lot of different things. It sort of is part of the flavor, or can take on the flavor of a community. Mm-hmm. So we're able to create an environment and a collection that really speaks to who we are, in Cranbrook. What are we in the East Kootenays? What's important to us? The local authors that we have, local artists, the kinds of books that interest our customers, get to know them a little bit. And I'd like to think we're a bit of a tourist attraction when people go through.
So let's just explore those community connections. How important is it to know your audience, know your local community when you are an independent bookstore?
Well, as a business person, it's critical, but it's also part of the fun of the job, getting to know people's stories and their lives and their families, watch the kids grow up, be part of different events in the community, donating to different teams or supporting the schools. It's important for us to be part of that on all levels.
Right. A few years ago, there was a prediction that independent bookstores were a thing of the past. They would be out of business. Everyone was going to buy their books from Amazon, or they were going to, rereading on their tablet or whatever the case. Mm-hmm. But there's been a real resurgence of interest in the printed book. Have you seen that?
I don't know if I'd call it a resurgence in the printed book so much as an appreciation for the places that hold them. Mm-hmm. I don't think books ever really went away. Mm-hmm. I think the sort of demise of the book at the hands of the e-reader was very overstated. Mm-hmm. Certainly did have an effect, but I've met, I think, 2 people in my life that prefer their e-reader. People like the tangible book. I think what we're seeing is a resurgence of interest in supporting local businesses, whether it's your bookstore, your farmer's market, your local coffee shop, whatever it is. I think people are really starting to appreciate more what those businesses and gathering spaces bring to their community. And certainly bookstores have benefited from that as well.
Right. Somewhat like the resurgence to vinyl records, again, something that maybe we thought had gone away, but very passionate following and so forth. Do you see that in readers as well, a very passionate following as to, the printed book or the printed word?
Absolutely, absolutely. Whether it's the little kids come tottering in looking for their Robert Munch books, or people looking to support it, like I said, a local author, or whatever was talked about on CBC this morning, people like their books. Mm-hmm.
So you've referred to local authors a number of times, and I tip my hat to you. You're very supportive of local authors. And,
it goes both ways.
And so forth, but there seems to be quite a variety of local authors and so forth. How do you find working with the local writing community?
We're very lucky here. We have good relationships with, I think, all of the local authors that we deal with, and we've got a really nice wide pool to work with. We've got a lot of talent in Cranbrook and the surrounding area. I know that what I hear from other booksellers, it's not always as easy as it is, so I'm grateful that the authors we have also support me, and it goes both ways.
Right. I noticed that you showcase local authors in a special section in your store. Is that something you do consciously? Is it something that you really sort of are happy to do?
Absolutely. Absolutely. People come in looking for, my neighbor wrote this book, or I heard about this thing, or there was an article in the Townsman, and so it makes it easier for customers to find. And I like to show that we have a lot of talent in the area.
Right. So I know that the book industry really thrives on bestsellers and so forth, but I know that your selection is pretty deep. How do you anticipate the needs or the wants of readers throughout the community?
Oh, calculated guess. I mean, we get a lot of help from our publishers and the reps in terms of what's coming up, but I also have Trevor, who's been here for 15 years, who does the buying, and he really sees the overall trends in a way that most people don't. So he's really good at that.
Let's just go back and talk about community connections. I know you do some novel, pardon the expression, events, something that's different that when you reach out to the community. Just describe a couple of events that you do.
Oh, we have so many fun events. We just had one recently that we did with the Hideout. We like to partner with them, called Books and Brews, where we sort of pair half a dozen of Heidi's Fisher Peak brews with half a dozen local authors, and we get people to in a room, and they get to have a sample of the beer while they enjoy an author reading. And that's quite a lot of fun.
Right. I had the privilege of being part of that, and it is a lot of fun, and I think that's an annual event, right?
This was the 3rd year we've done it, and we have sold out every time.
Right. And congratulations as well to the fact that you've hosted our Kootenay Authors event every year for the last 5 or 6 years. Again, a way of showcasing local authors and writers. So Erin, just looking at the future of independent bookstores and so forth, what do you see as the future?
Just going strong and getting stronger. Definitely. I know of a couple of bookstores in the area that have recently opened in the last year and a half. So that's always encouraging when there's new stores, people taking over existing stores, and a lot more, I guess, awareness of what bookstores have to offer for people that you can't get online. That you know, I mean, yeah, you can get a book cheaper on Amazon, but are they going to donate to your kid's hockey team?
So that local connection is so strong. And, you know, I'm just thinking when I visit a community, one of the first things I seek out is the local bookstore. And I just know people do that, and it just that strong connection. And do you see that, a lot of visitors that come by?
Absolutely. We see, and I guess I notice it because, of course, that's what I do when I go elsewhere. We look for the bookstore and the record store. And we definitely see people coming through from all over the place, looking for that, again, that flavor. You want to find your local, you know, your little local coffee shop. What are the good local restaurants, the local attractions, and I'm happy to be part of one of them.
Right. So not only are you a bookstore, but a local resource for lots of knowledge as well.
I hope so. We try.
Good. Well, congratulations, Erin. We appreciate the hard work that you invest in your
Keith.
business, and being an independent bookstore owner has its challenges without question, but I really am pleased that you're succeeding and working so hard at it. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Great to have you as a guest.
Thank you for your support.
And this has been Talking Kootenay Books. My name is Keith Powell.